Welcome back this week to Thursdays, ACES 53. What does ACES 53 stand for? ACES attitude, commitment, enthusiasm, and smile. As you can notice, it's just me again today, Brian Galke. Ed is still on vacation where the Wi-Fi is a bit spotty. So you get to deal with just me again this week, which can be a blessing and a curse. I'm going to talk less because we're arguing less, and I don't have that much to talk about. But what I want to come back with is to talk more about what we talked about on Tuesday's show, and that is, who is Jeremy Miner? And one is NEPQ questions. So NEPQ is Neuro-Emotional probing questions, and it's a unique way to ask questions to really understand your customers and your prospects. And we're going to dig a little bit deeper into that, but we're also going to cover what I think he does is a fantastic job of discussing a whole other skill besides asking questions. So how did I run across Jeremy Miner? He was actually a guest on Brad Lee's mastermind on Tuesdays called Closer School. And Jeremy just had a very unique way of asking questions and just putting a different spin on it that included, what's your inflection like? What's your tone? Are you curious? Are you asking questions the right way? And it was really changed the way I was raised around sales, which is, push, ask for the sale immediately, just go and present, show up and throw up. And it was really fascinating to see how you can learn so much more through questions. And I am going to look at some of what I got here from notes from his class from before, which, how did I start finding him? Met him through Brad, started following him on Facebook. I'll put the Facebook group here up a little bit later. He goes live quite a bit. He invites students of his on. Then I ended up buying the course. And then, as I mentioned in the previous live, he also has a book he just did with Jerry Acuff. So anyway, that's a little bit about him. I put up the website, so you can go watch a previous episode for that, or just look up Jeremy Miner, M-I-N-E-R, like you see here. And what I really liked about his stuff is, what can these questions do? And they're used to help customers overcome their own objections. There's just a natural tendency in people, as soon as we feel like this is a sales call, what happens? A wall goes up, and we're just waiting for them to pitch. So even if they don't get to the point pretty quick, we're just waiting. We're waiting. We're waiting. We know it's coming. How long are they going to take to get there? We know what the call is about. But when you ask people questions, or you start off by saying, well, I'm not sure my product is right for you, then that guard comes down just a little bit. But the cool thing about this is, what can questions help you with? And again, I am going to cheat. I'm going to read right off of it. Yes, I'm Banner Brian, but this one I just didn't want to have 85 banners for. So questions can help gather, analyze, and diagnose things. They can help you uncover if there are even problems to be discussed. Find out, do they want to change their situation? You can analyze and diagnose problems, causes, and effects. It helps people feel involved in the process. That's a whole big thing. Salespeople too often have, and we've talked about scripts. Scripts are so you can repeat the same consistent thing over and over again, but they are not to be read one line at a time. That's where problems come in. That's where the hatred of the word scripts, but you need scripts, and you need to role play and practice what you're going to do. As I mentioned before, in the industry I came from, we had to go and do presentations. If you don't think we were in the hotel practicing the presentations the day before we went, you'd be sadly mistaken. When you ask questions, it helps people feel motivated to act today instead of someday. It helps put you in control of the situation. When you're asking questions, you know which direction to kind of lead the person to afterwards. It allows people to tell you about themselves. It also empowers the customer to get in touch with their feelings and the situation, most importantly, so that they can do something about it. When you present something, people naturally have that wall up. When you ask people questions and they have to think about it, it brings a lot of things to the surface. It also helps them realize that you can be trusted and that you're an authority in your space. Not just you, it could be your product, it could be your company, you name it. It also helps people realize the consequences of not making a change. A lot of times, we're just human natures. We focus on the good side of things. There's what's known as the pain of change, but we don't realize how much pain are we putting up with just because we've gotten used to it. And that can be both personally, professionally, you name it. Been in both of those, as a matter of fact. But sometimes we are just taught to kind of go with the flow. We like consistency. Nobody likes change immediately. But when you start questioning things and you're looking at them and examining things, that may be all the more reason to make a change. Then, of course, along with that is, you can help them overcome their concerns. you can help them realize what's causing the problem. So not everything, if you go to the doctor, yes, okay, my knee hurts, my arm hurts, but is what's causing that pain? So is there something behind the scenes that you should be doing that make a change over here that actually isn't what impacts right here? And that's what questions help do. And last but not least is help people realize that they want to resolve that problem once you've identified it. So questions are so important. The show up and throw up idea needs to go away. Conversations happen because of questions. People want to be talked with and consulted, not talked to and just preached to. Nobody likes to be lectured or preached to. So with the questions, what can I help with? Asking the right questions at the right time eliminates pressure. And pressure is really what causes rejection. Because again, we start building up to, oh, here comes a pitch. Oh, I'm waiting for it. But when you start to really eliminate the pressure of that, because maybe your product isn't right for the person, or ask them questions and realize you don't need them as a client, that's when that pressure goes away. And that's what really helps quite a bit. And then the right questions lead to the client telling you about their problems. What's it causing? How is it affecting them? Is it causing profit problems with the company? Is it causing customer service problems? If you're in the real estate market, is it causing you and your family problems? Have you outgrown the house you're in? Do you have too much house? Is it causing stress on you financially? All these things are available because a lot of times when we're calling people, we have an idea of what they do. We may know their title. We may know who they work for. We may know where they live, but we don't know the person. And all our assumptions do is bite us in the ass. But when you can sit down and ask questions, that's when you can really understand other people. Yes, I'm Ben O'Brien. So what else can questions help with? Gather information. You get to involve the other person. You get to help them internally persuade themselves. There's the one I mentioned on Tuesday, which is, I know you don't know, but if you did know, what would you? And when people talk, that's them talking to themselves. Who do people love the most? Yes, themselves. So when you get them to answer questions, that's them telling them all the reasons they should go with you and or your product or service. And who are we going to listen to the most? Us, because we like ourselves the most. And as we mentioned earlier, the right questions can help people realize situations they're in and why they're in them. So what are the consequences that they're running up against? What's the cause of those consequences? Is this something you can help them with? All these things come up as a direct result of asking people questions instead of just showing up. So should you still have a presentation if you have one? Absolutely. Can you give them up front and just say, hey, let me ask some questions? And I know we like to follow our slides in a certain order. I want to make sure, for example, I used to work and we'd have to do RFPs or requests for proposals where we were given an exact thing of all the bullet points that we had to cover during the time frame. However, we also asked for permission of, can you tell me what the most important part from this document is to you? And then we can jump around the PowerPoint. It won't be as smooth as if we just went top to bottom, but we want to make sure we address what's most important to you first. And it's when you ask those questions that you get that feedback from the audience. And look, some of these presentations were an hour to 4 hours long. You want to get to where their most important areas are, because people start to quit paying attention, especially if you're right after lunch or you're getting ready to go to lunch, or they've got a busy day. The longer you keep people, the more you lose them. So if you can immediately address what their concerns are by asking what's most important to you, it'll take you a long, long way. But what I really liked also was questions are important. But one of the modules in Jeremy's course is listening. And that is, you have to listen for what your prospect means, not just what they say. We all the time have automatic responses. You walk into a store, a salesperson's walking right towards you. Oh, is there anything I can help you with today? I'm just looking. There's a gut response to what we say. And by you actively listening, when you ask these questions, that's when you get to dig a little bit deeper when you're talking to the people. And the other thing that Jeremy really teaches is don't focus so much on you have to close the sale. When you learn to just say, hey, some deals aren't worth it. Yes, I want to get rid of it. So really, once you learn to let go of the sale, you can focus on the person, right? And if you're actively listening to them, then basically you're listening instead of just preparing for what you're going to say next. We're all guilty of that. I'm sure there's a certain person who tell you that I was bad about this. I was ready for them to stop talking so I could start talking because I knew what I wanted to say. And at that point, I was not actively listening to them. I was making it about me, what I wanted to say, but you have to actively listen to the person you're talking to. And so that's one of the cool things about it is when you're actively listening, right, what can you do is it changes how people perceive you. So if you can listen without judgment, you can actually focus on them and not what you want, your product, your, forgot, just drew blank, your product, your service, but what I want personally, instead of just focusing on what am I hearing? What are the next questions based not on what I want to say, not my agenda, but based on what they said, we can dig a little bit deeper. And that's where the active listening really comes in. Ed and I talked about this in a few episodes ago, and we kind of got away from it because we've been talking about having a standard operating procedure so you can hire people that can come in and they can repeat the process so you can ultimately grow. And that's why scripts are important. But scripts, as we mentioned before, that's just a baseline of where you can start. But it's by asking questions and listening that then you pick choose your own adventure that comes along. So you have to know your product. You have to have a repeatable process. You have to make sure you get everything done. That's where a script comes in. But it's the asking questions and listening to what the person says that makes all the difference in the world. And we've talked about this before. What they say about if you assume, you make an ass out of you and me. So that's what really active listening is. It's about not judging. You can go in. I used to have a friend who, right after college, he worked at a Cadillac dealership. And when we're raised in school, we think, oh, the person who comes in with the suit, they're the rich one, right? What he actually found is the people who came in shorts, t-shirt, didn't have to be dressed to the nines. Those were people who had FU money. Those are people who could afford to pay cash. And that's the funny thing is what we're taught, dress for success, you have to look the part and all these things, isn't necessarily true. So those are assumptions that we've been taught that, because a person dresses this way, because they talk this way, because they look this way, it must mean something. Nothing can be further from the truth. Everybody's somewhat unique. We're not all special snowflakes, but we all are somewhat unique. And it's only by asking questions you can learn to understand the other person instead of making assumptions or prejudging them based on, again, title, where they work. You never know who really has the influence on things. There's plenty of times that people go and they suck up to the CEO or they suck up to the president of the company or whoever it is that's in a higher authority. But that person really may be taking the input from somebody below them that's actually in the trenches. And this is the decision maker. So when you just bypass somebody to talk to the highest level, that's not always accurate as to who the decision maker is that you're talking to. What else happens when you learn to listen to people is you create value in you. Why? Because you're paying attention. You're not there just pitching them right off the bat. You're creating a conversation. Conversations build rapport. Rapport is what builds relationships. You've heard me talk before about how you can actually go in and decode somebody's facial features to figure out how can I ask them questions? How do I speak their language? And when you're making it about them instead of making it about you, it makes a world of difference. Big book I recommend whenever I'm talking from stages is Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. It's a pretty horrific book in the first half of the book because it's about his actual experiences of going to a concentration camp during the Holocaust, all the way from you get off the train, turn this way, you live, you turn this way, you die. And because he was a medical professional, he had to see a lot of shit. And he had to go and see what people could survive, the inhumane conditions. I've been to Auschwitz in outside of Krakow in Poland, the actual concentration camp that he writes about in the book. And when you see where people lived and what they slept on, you just can't imagine. We are so spoiled as a society. It's just crazy. But the whole point about that book is what he realized is the people who survived those inhumane conditions weren't the people who were focused on themselves. Yes, human preservation, we all want to survive, but the ones who said, I want to see my wife again. I want to see my husband again. I want to see my kids. I want to see my parents. I want to see my home. when they made it about something more than them, they were able to survive these just extreme conditions and make it to do those things again. The reason I bring that up is when you're making your sale about you and your commission, what you're going to get, or your company, your bonus, whatever it is, that's when you tend to fail. It's when you learn to focus on how can I help them? Is my product right for them? Is my service right for them? And conversely, you're also qualifying customers are going, is this a customer we want? There's plenty of times that we can all win business that would cause us more pain than is worth the pay that comes along with it. So that's where questions and qualifying come in. When you really learn to listen, what are you doing? You're showing respect. By the way, if you have a smartwatch, I don't. I know myself good enough that if I had a smartwatch, I would be like, I'm distracted. I have to put this thing on airplane mode. Like right now, it's on do not disturb, because what would happen if a text came in? Squirrel. But when you're actively listening and you can go and repeat back, you don't have to do verbatim what they said. Learn this one in going through an Amigo therapy. Amigo therapy, somebody says something, you repeat it back to them just so that they understand that you were listening, and you're asking, did I understand you correctly? Chris Voss goes through this in his book, Never Split the Difference also, is you don't want a yes or a no from somebody. You want them to say, that's right. Meaning that if you say, from what I understood, you were saying that this, and this is your pain point. And you don't want them to go, yes. You want them to go, that's right. Because that means that they literally appreciate you taking the time to listen. And more importantly, you heard what they were trying to communicate with. And that gives them the opportunity to clarify if what you heard wasn't correct. What else do you see? Well, when people see you're listening, because it's so rare this day and age, when it's more about email, text messages, social media, you name it, this is who people want to do business with. We've talked about it all the time. They have to know, like, and trust you to want to do business with you. And the best way to do that is to have conversations, two-way conversations, asking questions, listening, and then either expanding on their response or asking additional questions afterwards. That's how you create the rapport that we talked about earlier that leads to relationships. So how does he kind of sum it up? There's 5 steps to active listening. Be aware, be curious, acknowledge what you hear, be silent. What does the be silent mean? It means pause for a second, because if we just get done talking and somebody immediately jumps in, we think, well, shit, they weren't listening to us at all. So that's why there's the pause in between the two. I don't know. Here's my ADD kicking. If you've ever seen the movie Yes Man with Jim Carrey, there's a part where his boss is inviting him over and he's like, hey, I want to invite you to the party. He goes, heck, can't make it. He goes, well, wait a minute. I didn't even tell you what it was. He's like, oh, yeah. That's a perfect example of somebody who already was working on their response and they stopped listening a while ago. And then the last one is be understanding. What does be understanding mean? Going back to that, no assumptions, no judgment. Make this about, is this the right thing for the two people versus I just need to make my commission or my sales. All right. With that, we've been on about 18 minutes. Man, today the time flew by. The time flew by. I mentioned on Tuesday, he goes active pretty often in the Facebook group, and it's not just him teaching, but he also brings in current students who are taking different versions of his coursework and lets them talk. And then they talk about the different type of questions. So we mentioned a few of those on Tuesday, but if you ever get a chance, the group on Facebook, you can go and just look for Sales Revolution Group or click on this particular link right here. And what they do is they go live. And so you get to hear how different industries used it. I was actually driving to a networking meetup last night and it popped up and said, Jeremy Miner's gone live. I'm like, okay, well, I'll listen to it while I was driving. And it was them interviewing someone who is a realtor in Arizona. And as you can imagine, it's kind of hard to be in the realtor space right now. But it was talking about what questions do they ask when they call up people. They talked about pauses. They talked about, do you sound curious? Do you sound confident? Depending on what question you're asking, you kind of alter through all these things. You know, what inflection did you use? Did you use the pauses in the right way? Did you take some of the pressure off by letting them know up front, hey, I'm not sure that we're even the right people to do business? That helps take pressure off of people. So go in, listen to these groups. I was really inspired after listening to one of the ones yesterday. I actually bought a different book they have called The Black Book of NEPQ. It's $7 on their website right now. So I am a product of the product. Again, I'm not an affiliate for them. I don't get a referral fee from them. We were just talking about who are people that we've ever run across in the sales industry, meaning both Ed and I, because Ed couldn't be on here today because of where he's on vacation at. But who has influenced you in the terms of sales? And sales is more than just pushing a product. Sales is customer service. Sales is helping take care of people. Maybe you refer them to someone else. But who are these different people in the industry that you learn from that we want to just share with y'all? So go check out Jeremy Miner. Like I mentioned, him and Jerry Acuff just released a new book. Let's go and check that out as well. That one's on my list on Amazon to purchase. But check out Jeremy. Join the Facebook group. I think it's open to the public. It is a private group, but you can request access to it. Just check them out. Give us feedback. Once again, Ed Parcaut, go get Ed's book. If you're thinking about purchasing your home, you want to build wealth through real estate, Ed's book is fantastic. I will go create another banner for him. So unlike Joe, which was Get Ted's book, it's Get Ed's book. So www.getedsbook.com. So if you go here, how can you get Ed's book? Get Ed's book. Or you can also just come in and go to, of course, his website, which is edparcaut.com. So that being said, I accidentally deleted it. Well, you should know Ed by now. Plus, I put our stuff in the bio. See, this is what happens when you do things on the fly and live. But with that, give us some feedback. Join the YouTube page. Let us know who inspired you. If you're in sales, if you're in marketing, if you're in customer service, who are some people in the industry that made a difference to you that you'd like us to cover for everyone else? And other than that, have a great weekend. We are here on Tuesdays and Thursdays, 10 p.m. Pacific, noon Central. Follow us here for more information. Have a great day. Bye, y'all.